The symbolism was adroit because the alchemist had hit upon a basic truth, namely that all departments of nature can be brought under one general pattern, and any science thoroughly understood is a key to nearly all other forms of learning. Thus in alchemy, the entire weight of an important philosophical system was trusted to chemistry and chemical symbolism. We may say that this was suitable and proper for the reason that against this symbolism there was no well-integrated body of opposition. Had these philosophers revealed themselves as philosophers, they would have been persecuted. Had they advanced their ideas on a religious level, they would have been executed. Had they attempted to develop psychological training, they would probably have fallen victim to the Inquisition. But as chemists, they had several appeals. First of all, medicine and the chemical sciences were accepted by theology. They were accepted as necessary, and the Church had no direct opposition to the advancement of medical science. It did not agree with it particularly, but it accepted it. The second thing is that this symbolism strangely intrigued the covetousness of the human mind. During the rise of alchemical symbolism, many princes, powerful leaders of both church and state, hired and maintained alchemists and carried elaborate research programs because alchemy promised to transmute base metal into gold and to discover the universal medicine and the elixir of life. And there wasn't a rogue in Europe who didn't want to live longer. And there wasn't a king in Europe who did not want additional funds in the treasury. So the appeal to the cupidity and the selfishness of mankind helped to protect the alchemist from persecution. He had hit upon a wonderful formula. And even though he did suffer to some degree from the greed of princes, still for the most part he was catered to and pampered. And we remember the Street of the Gold Makers in Prague, in Czechoslovakia, where a whole colony of these alchemists worked together for a number of years under the princes of Bohemia and other royal patrons. Now, it must be rather interesting to realize that these alchemists were supported, maintained, and nursed along by the very tyrants who alchemy expected to eliminate. But it was only timely to carry the step as we must by degrees. Now we have many hints, for example, that alchemy was a well-integrated kind of chemical guild, just as the tailors and the shoemakers and the various guilds were a closely integrated body with their obligations, with their trade union patterns. So the chemists formed a guild, and the great guild of the chemists gradually turned into the guild of alchemy. Now let us take another parallel to this because I think it is helpful to us and we want penetration as well as coverage. I have made considerable research on the activity of architectural guilds in Europe during the period of the great cathedral builders. And we've come across a number of very interesting facts. When a great community or a powerful prelate of the church was resolved to build a cathedral, it was a great undertaking in those days. And if you visit the marvelous cathedrals at Chartres or Notre Dame or one of the wonderful churches in Florence, in Verona, you will realize how great an undertaking these cathedrals really were. The local villages, of course, could do very little because at that time the village around the cathedral was just a little mass of huts practically around this magnificent building. Even today the cathedral towns of Europe can be seen for miles, but only the cathedral standing what appears to be alone, but actually surrounded by the low buildings of the citizens. When the time came to build a cathedral, the designer, the architect, or the sponsor, let it be known to the wandering journeyman. Perhaps in towns at that time there was a carpenter, or one or two stonemasons. who passed through on their apprenticeship. These were told, and in 3 months all Europe knew. These wandering journeymen, traveling from place to place, told everyone along the way. They in turn told everyone else that they met, and so on. And so in 3 or 4 months, the whole of Europe knew that this great building was contemplated. As a result of that, qualified workmen in all of the lines naturally involved in such a project began to congregate. Now today we would say they would come and probably come up with their trailers or something of that nature and build a little community or something of that nature, or move into hotels and boarding houses. Such things didn't exist at that time. When these builders came, they brought their families with them, they drove their cattle, they brought all their worldly goods, because they never expected to leave that community alive. In those days, to build a cathedral was a matter of 200 or 300 years. These men and their sons and their sons' sons would work on that building. It would continue until it was finished. Under such conditions, these builders, some coming from countries that did not even speak the language of the land in which they were to work, did not mingle with the citizens, did not move into the community or the town. They built their own city, a comparatively permanent one. And in one of the cathedrals in which I made some research, we learned that a town composed of nearly 15,000 human beings was built in a few weeks on the site of work. This town simply came into existence. And it was all made up of workmen, craftsmen, who recognized each other by certain secret signs, who had their master's marks, and who were known to be qualified for various work. There were apprentices, and there were craftsmen, and there were masters of the work. As soon as this community came into existence, it built homes for those who were to work there. In the midst of this great community, they built their community houses. And they then sent to the nearby town where the work was to be done and communicated with the architects and the financing committee and demanded their proper share or their proper token. For it was up to the community where they worked to supply each one of these men with a pair of gloves, a white lambskin apron, and a certain amount of raw hides and skins to cover the roof of his communion house. As soon as this had been properly taken care of, this community, created by these workmen, held a session, elected its own officers, created its own mayor, or in this case, master of the work, his assistants, to prepare the work of the day, and to lay out the program for all of the other workmen. These men and their community lived completely apart from the rest of the country in which they lived. And as the records of the time show, they did not even follow in the religion of the community. These people had their own religion. And several early fathers, writing of these communities of builders, shook their heads sadly over their quills and said that we think that some of them were not as good Orthodox Christians as they should have been. It's quite possible, because from the Near East came men who worked in silk and fabrics, came cutters of stones and gems. From North Africa came men skilled in design and artistry. From Bulgaria, Romania, from the great Slavic states, from all parts of Europe they came, Christian, Muslim, Jew, everything you can think of, but all bound together by the great guilds into which they had been initiated. These guilds created their own world. They created their own cooperatives. They had their own ways of taking care of the widows and the fatherless. They took care of their own sick. They brought their own physicians. They did everything, and they created a form of government which we call today democracy. And that democracy began within the structure of the guilds.